So, 2 more weeks of working on Shogun Showdown mods have passed, kind of. In the first week, my efficiency fell through the floor halfway through because I got sick. Then this week, I got sick on Tuesday, recovered by Thursday, but then worked on fixing my playlist shuffler instead. Still, I made 2 mods and updated the third one, so let's take a look at that. The first thing I started working on was a mod meant to address an issue that hasn't come up yet, but is bound to happen sooner or later, even if I remain the only content-making modder of this game. That is chaos. I love having a million different abilities in a roguelike, that's how you make every run unique. But if you're trying to go for a specific build or quest, all that RNG becomes frustrating, because chances are you will fail despite doing nothing wrong. Plus there may be a tile or skill that you just don't enjoy playing with, and if you knew ahead of time how it worked, you would prefer not to unlock it at all. And both of these issues can be solved by a simple quality of life feature, namely the ability to ban tiles and skills from appearing during the run. And would you look at that? Shogun Showdown's hub already has a convenient list of all the tiles and skills that can appear in-game. So the core idea was simple: make these tiles and skills detect mouse clicks, and when they do, have them toggle between banned and unbanned. The execution of course wasn't as simple. I had to actually understand Shogun Showdown's custom-made UI system, and then create a new component to attach to all these archive elements in order to handle detecting clicks and displaying which tiles and skills are banned. And once it looked like it worked, it was time to make it actually work, which was somehow the easy part. As it turns out, Shogun Showdown's shops already have an items to avoid list, so it was just a matter of adding the banned skills to that list. And for tiles, I hijacked the method that initialized the random tile generator with a list of tiles and their probabilities, so that the banned tiles never made it on that list. Then came balancing. Implementing a limit on how many tiles and skills can be banned was needed to protect the game from breaking, if it for instance didn't have enough skills to fill up a shop, or ran out of tiles to offer in rewards. Because, in case you didn't know, Shogun Showdown deletes the tiles you chose from the random pool, and that means that A, you can only get a duplicate of a tile you started with, and B, because normally you are nowhere near clearing the entire pool this way, if you force the game to do so, it has no idea how to handle it and just throws an error. And it would also help keep the spirit of the roguelike game. Unless you're a speedrunner, getting basically the same build on every run would get boring sooner rather than later. For the specific amount, I decided that half of the number you get in the vanilla game once you unlock everything sounds reasonable. So for tiles you must have 21 minimum, and that part was easy enough to implement with a simple count of the tiles that are both unbanned and unlocked. The same cannot be said for skills. After all, they are divided into distinct categories: combo, dancer, guarding, warring, and the other ones, each appearing in its distinct shop. Design-wise it wasn't a problem, just apply the half of the vanilla amount rule to each type individually, meaning that each needs at least 4 of them unbanned. Except for the types without a dedicated shop, those can be banned without limits. But how do you tell the type of the skill? It's not defined within the skill itself, instead it's the shops that hold the list of what skills they can offer. Well, the good news is that Shogun Showdown developers thought ahead and gave distinct IDs to the skill types. Each of them has a 4-digit ID, and the first digit of it can be used to identify the type. So 9 is for the merchant skills, 5 for artifact ones, then 1 is warring, 2 is combo, 3 is guarding, and 4 is dancing. And yes, this means that there are unused digits, and yes, I do plan on using that fact to add a whole new shop type at some point. But tangent aside, bad news is that the archive entries don't actually store the ID, just the skill image, name and description. Which means that the one reliable way to get the skill ID was to go through the list of skill entries in the archive once it loaded in, and compare each unlocked skill sprite with the image of each entry to find the ones that match and store which skill is at that slot. For the sake of compatibility, I also added into that function a snippet of code that checks if you have the extras mod enabled, so that when it constructs the list of all existing skills, it can take the ones it adds into account. And in the extras mod itself, I had to rearrange the IDs a bit so that they would follow the pattern used by vanilla skills, but other than that, thanks to the fact that I made the mod count how many things remain unbanned, Everything else just fell in place in terms of compatibility. Adding more tiles and skills doesn't affect the functionality in any way, it just means you're able to ban more of them before the limit kicks in. I also made it so banning tiles costs skulls, because once you unlock everything, they're mostly just there gathering dust. Originally I tested it with a price of 15 skulls per ban, increasing by 5 for every tile and skill already banned, but that turned out to be utter nonsense, and after doing proper math, I figured out that base cost of 5 and increase of 1 was exactly what I was looking for. In either case, just like with unlocks and randomizer rolls, the price increase caps at 99 skulls. And this currency isn't exactly spent when you ban a tile, more like stored, since unbanning a tile gives it back. And tiles and skills share the ban cost, just because. It made the math on how much it should cost easier, but it's not something I was thinking about at that time. It's worth mentioning that when I was first designing this mod, I was considering some more complex ideas, like the ability to mark a number of tiles and skills as favored to increase the chance of them appearing, or making it so banned tiles still have a small chance of appearing. Specifically, all the banned tiles combined would have the same chance of appearing as one non-banned tile, but I decided that a simple banned or non-banned system would ultimately be the most practical. I also plan in the future on adding more archive tabs, so you can ban things like consumables, shops and enchantments, since I plan on modding those in, but even a single new addition will significantly alter the current balance of them, since they only have a few types each. For those, the ban limit will most likely be the vanilla amount -1, and this mod would of course benefit from some UX polish, things like giving the player feedback on why banning failed, whether the ban limit was reached or they can't afford it. Also, an unban all button and the ability to save ban presets would be useful. And even though there's probably like 5 people total who play this game with a controller or a keyboard with no mouse, one of those 5 people downloaded this mod and came to my Discord asking to add controller support, which is something I was planning to have originally anyway, but ran into some trouble with it, and because I was sick, decided that it's not worth it due to the aforementioned number of players using that control scheme. But when I revisited this issue this week, it turned out that all I had to do was insert a single line of code into an archive page function to make it work. Yeah, it was that simple, I just couldn't quite connect the dots back then. While I was working on the archive bans during the first week, there was an ongoing conversation in the Shogun Showdown Discord, and while I didn't follow it too closely, it looked like the idea of a time limit per turn came up on 2 separate occasions. Then on Sunday someone asked if a mod like that would be possible, in response to which I decided on a whim to prove that not only it is possible, the fact that the game already has a timer that counts combat time makes it so easy that I could make it in an afternoon while sick. And that's how Blitz Showdown came to be. There's not much more to say about this mod, though the fact that I was sick did result in me overlooking the fact that I need to reset the turn timer when starting a new game, so I had to fix that this week. And finally there's Shogun Showdown Extras, which I intend to use as a testing ground for trying to add literally one of everything into the game. A consumable, an enchantment, a shrine, an elite enemy type, a whole region at some point, and a number of other things. And the next thing on that list, after tiles, skills and quests, was a new hero. I have several ideas for what heroes could be implemented, including one corrupted by the eclipse, and also literally Sekiro, but what I ended up settling on was the Gambler. I worked with Apocalypse 6 to make the sprites for him, where I mostly provided the idea of making this character have a merchant mask, because I want to make a gambling shop at some point, and designed said mask, aiming to make it fox-like. Then on the gameplay side, I wanted his special move to have the effect of the D6 consumable, forcing the target directly ahead to reroll their intention for the next turn. And for the loadouts, well, Mon was a must-have, and since that special move doesn't allow you to swap places with the enemy, the other tile had to be one that would give that option, and I picked Back Shadow Dash. Then for the second loadout, I decided that the combat tile would be Blade of Patience, which may be a bit of a stretch, but it does have a little bit of gold in its sprite and an element of gambling in its use. You know, how many turns can you afford and find it worth to charge it before use, and whether you'll actually get to use it, or a long-reach enemy forces you to use a different attack. I paired it up with Swap, since there's no reason why a modded hero couldn't start with modded tiles, although I swapped the 2 movement tiles around after Apocalypse correctly pointed out that Backshadow Dash synergizes better with Blade of Patience. This also resulted in the first loadout having short single word names on both tiles, while the second tile's names are 3 words each. At that point I gave the Wanderer those loadouts and the special move to give them a try in game. And the conclusion I came to was that while the tile selection worked, the special move just wasn't fun. Other moves let you throw enemies into one another, or reposition them so they hit each other, and this one had none of that. It took a while to figure out a new one, and once again Apocalypse's help was invaluable, because the move I settled on was inspired by his idea. And that move is Shuffle, a move that randomly swaps around the contents of the 3 cells in front of you. So it's not as good at avoiding hits as Swap or Chain Toss, but in exchange it has a unique niche of being able to hit up to 3 enemies at once, meaning that it scales exceptionally well with the skills that add damage or status to the special move. And that's where the first week of development ended for extras, and I released the Gambler as an incomplete hero that can be accessed through the mod settings. I will need to at some point give him the proper sprites, decide what quest unlocks him and give him his own slot in the hero selection, but there is a slight issue. Because this just appeared in my Discord one day, which is objectively better for a Japanese-inspired hero called the Gambler, but wouldn't fit in as the merchant for a gambling shop. And since then I've been periodically coming back to this situation, trying to figure out if I could have the best of both worlds somehow. And I do have one idea, though it's not developed enough to talk about it in this devlog. And that would be it for the updates on the Extras mod, were it not for the fact that when I built the version 030 that I uploaded by the end of the first week, I forgot to turn off a debug function that gave you 999 skulls when entering the camp. And I didn't want to make an update that only fixes this one thing, so I decided to make a new tile while I was at it. And the one I settled on was the Shinobi Axe from Sekiro. There, it's a slow, powerful strike that destroys shields, so I translated it as an attack that hits the tile directly in front, dealing 3 base damage with 2 special effects. If the target has a shield, it's destroyed before the damage is dealt, and if the target is an inanimate object, which currently means either the Thorns Vine or the Barricade, it is destroyed in 1 hit, regardless of the actual damage. Both of these effects are very situational, but should become actually worthwhile once I add some new enemies and such to this mod. And that's all for this update. It turned out longer than I thought it would, so if you're still here, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more of my devlogs, check the description for links to the mods I talked about, and until next time, farewell.